Even though I expected more, for the last few months the JBL Xtreme 2 has been one of my favorite speakers, period. It's not too big, it has a decent battery life, I can take it almost anywhere, and most importantly, sounds pretty good. And the Xtreme 2 has done a very good job of outperforming similar speakers that were released after it. But today, we're going to put the Xtreme 2 up against two more large portable speakers. Let's see if the Sony XB501G or the Marshall Kilburn 2 can finally dethrone the JBL Xtreme 2. All three of these speakers were released in the second half of 2018 and they all retail for $300. If you want to pick either of these speakers up, I'll have links in the description below, and if you use the links, it really helps out the channel. I highly suggest you check them out because Sony and JBL speakers routinely go on sale, so you might get lucky. And if you want to learn more about either of these speakers, then please watch their full reviews. Design-wise, these speakers look very different from one another. The JBL Xtreme 2 is the smallest and lightest speaker here, weighing in at 5.2 pounds. And it's the most rugged speaker here because it has a fabric mesh body that does a very good job of standing up to bumps and scrapes. You just gotta be careful with those exposed radiators. The Kilburn 2 is also pretty rugged, but honestly, I would hate to damage that metal grill on the front or scuff up the tumble leather looking body. But technically, the Kilburn 2 is the most fragile speaker here because it's only rocking an IPX2 rating, so I would keep the speaker away from water just to be safe. But in general, I'm a really big fan of the Kilburn 2's classic design. And finally, there's the Sony XB501G. This is the big boy of the group. It weighs in at almost 7 pounds and takes up the most table space. But unfortunately, due to its hard plastic body, it's not very rugged because it does tend to scratch very easily. And it's important to keep that in mind because all of these speakers are meant to be portable speakers that you take with you on the go because they all have some sort of carrying handle. But JBL does win bonus points here because they were smart enough to build in a bottle opener on their carrying strap. And now, I just want to quickly address a few things about the Sony XB501G. This speaker has a built-in light feature that you can control from Sony's Music Center app. It looks decent and it does add an extra element when listening to music. But you do end up sacrificing some battery life. The G in Sony XB501G also stands for Google Assistant. Hey Google, turn on the studio light, and what is the current price of Bitcoin?
1 BTC is approximately 6,344 United States dollars. You got it, turning the studio light on.
This feature works very well and it can do almost everything a normal Google Home can, except you can't make phone calls with it. But if you don't want to, you can just use the XB501G like a standard Bluetooth speaker. But now I want to focus on ports because depending on your needs, this can be a real deal breaker for you. The Sony XB501G has a dedicated charging port and a USB-C port, but this USB-C port can only be used to charge the speaker or charge your own devices. It doesn't support data transfer, so you can only play music off of the XB501G wirelessly. And unfortunately, this speaker doesn't have LDAC support, which is a huge departure from Sony's other speakers. The Marshall Kilburn 2 does still have an audio jack, but sadly there's no USB out port so you can charge your own devices. And finally, there's the Xtreme 2, which I think has the best port setup here for a portable Bluetooth speaker. It keeps the audio jack if you really need it, and it has a USB-A out port so you can charge your own devices. But I think the Marshall Kilburn 2 has the best Bluetooth connectivity setup here. It's rocking Bluetooth 5.0, it has aptX support, it can be connected to two devices at the same time, and if you're an iPhone user, it's good for watching videos because it has very little latency. The JBL Xtreme 2 can also be connected to two devices at the same time, but this speaker isn't the best for watching videos because it does have a bit of latency. But then there's the Sony XB501G. This guy can only be connected to one device at a time, and it's not suitable for watching videos whatsoever. This thing has a lot of latency in both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth mode. And the Kilburn 2 has the best real-world battery life here. With the volume set at 80% and with the bass knob set to 5, which is about the same amount of bass the Xtreme 2 has, this speaker is good for about 11 hours of playback time, whereas the Xtreme 2 is good for about 9 hours of playback time. And unfortunately, the Sony XB501G has the worst real-world battery life here of just 6 hours. And that's because the battery has a lot more work to do here because of the extra bass feature and the light feature. But if you use this speaker with those features turned off, then you should be able to squeeze out a little bit more battery life out of this speaker. But then that kind of defeats the purpose as to why you even got this speaker. And now, let's talk about speaker setups. The XB501G has a single frontward firing subwoofer and dual angled satellite speakers that do a very good job of covering a larger area outdoors than most other speakers. The Marshall Kilburn 2 has a single frontward firing woofer and dual tweeters, but since there's a bass deflector that shoots out the back, this speaker does perform better when it's up against the wall. And finally, there's the JBL Xtreme 2. Even though it's the smallest speaker here, it has the most hardware going for it. It has dual frontward firing transducers, dual tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. Now, we're about to jump into a sound test. The Xtreme 2 is using the latest firmware update, the Sony XB501G is in extra bass mode, and the Marshall Kilburn 2 is playing with its volume knob set to 10, bass set to 5, and treble set to 7.
So I'm crazy. Oh my baby, got me staring at you. So I'm crazy. Why you bend that back for me? We won't stop. Got your feet on fly. You get to fly with me. I can take you down for a ride. I take you around my life. Jaywalking, crosswalking, live like a true. I know it, you know it, we make it.
Now, both the Sony XB501G and Marshall Kilburn 2 have the potential to have more bass than the JBL Xtreme 2 and have almost as much bass as the JBL boombox. With the XB501G, you can go into Sony's Music Center app and adjust its EQ from there. And with the Kilburn 2, you can manually raise the bass and treble with the knobs up top. But bass isn't everything. I can't help but notice the Xtreme 2 has the wider soundstage and better instrument separation. Whereas with both the Kilburn 2 and XB501G, everything does sound a little close together compared to the Xtreme 2. So the Xtreme 2 does still have the better audio fidelity, and in general, it has a decent amount of bass. But a very important detail I do want to point out is that if you use the Xtreme 2 while it's plugged into power, it's going to get louder and sound fuller with more bass. Whereas with both the Sony and Marshall speakers, if you plug them into power, they aren't going to perform any differently. So yeah, if you want lots and lots of bass in a small package, go with the Sony or Marshall. Or if you just want a good sounding speaker, go with the Xtreme 2. And overall, I still think the JBL Xtreme 2 is the best $300 speaker here. And here's why. Like I just said, the Xtreme 2 has the better audio fidelity here, and if you use it while it's plugged in, it's going to get louder and have more bass. It also has a decent real-world battery life that's going to have no problem lasting you a whole day of listening. And if you're at the beach or at the basketball court, you can use it to charge your own phone if you're running low on battery, something that the Kilburn can't do. And the Xtreme 2 is also the better investment here, because if you plan on getting other smaller JBL speakers in the future, you can pair them together with JBL Connect Plus. Whereas the Kilburn 2 can't be paired up to any other speakers, and the XB501G can only play in sync with other smart speakers using Chromecast, and that only works if you have Wi-Fi. But the Marshall Kilburn 2 is still a very close second for me, because in some ways, it's better than the Xtreme 2. I'm a really big fan of its classic design. It has a lot of bass in a pretty small package. I really like its Bluetooth performance. It has a longer lasting battery, and it even has fast charging. The only thing I hate about it is that it doesn't have a multi-purpose button to physically control your music. But I would only consider picking up the Marshall Kilburn 2 over the JBL Xtreme 2 if you don't plan on picking up any other speakers in the future at all. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. Support the channel by clicking on the links down below, and I'll catch you next time.